Hey Jeff,
Good morning.
is it still morning for you? Or you're in
It
Texas, right?
just crossed.
It just crossed. That's right. It's 11 over here in Arizona. So, yeah. Cool.
Did and time has gotten away from me this week. Did I have something that I was supposed to do this week? I brought up the old deck just in case there was.
No, well, actually, that might be useful. No real thing for you. And I got to
Okay,
get better about trying to push agendas. The same thing. My week's just gotten totally away from me. I was like, oh my gosh, it's Thursday. I have OCP
right.
today. And so I had just a couple quick kind of pass downs, and then I was gonna pull up the spec, but might just be you and I, and if we have a short meeting, that's okay too.
That's
Um,
great. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I guess one thing is, so have you gotten GitHub to work? I spent another chunk of time
Oh,
on that end of last week, and I was getting some like Intel proxy errors. I don't know if you have any luck.
I mean, I'm able to get to it. I'm just not able to do a. I
That's
wasn't
the
able to do
cool.
a branch. I could clone it and so forth,
Okay,
but yeah, I just took that as the yeah, I just need to email our IT guy,
Kevin. Yeah,
Kevin. Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
But I
So
have not done that. So
okay, no worries. I'm gonna work through some stuff and see if anybody else at Intel found a workaround. I'm sure there's something. And then
if you yeah if John Leong would be the
oh, good point. Yeah, and he's
he,
probably yeah, he's a good
he-
one.
yeah, he's definitely done all the Intel GitHub issues.
Thank you. Totally forgot. I was gonna ping Sammy and some other stuff
Oh,
first.
and crap, we're on recording, so he'll know that I sent you to him. So
You gave him some work.
if
Yeah.
you can make up some other name by chance, that'll work. I can give you a few.
We'll have some AI posting coding here or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was gonna ping some other people, but yeah, he's pretty good. Hey Dev.
Hi guys.
Deb.
Um, let me see here. So that was one. Still struggling through that. And then the other one, a little bit of a pass down. So Deb and I and Shruti were in a meeting late last night. Just gave a quick update, and they're trying to pull together different work streams and all kinds of stuff. I think just regular start of the year things. And I guess one of the questions that came up, and this is kind of as it relates to our spec, I can try to pull it up. Um, I know there's that official Redfish profile, Jeff, that you've taken us through sort of the PowerPoint a couple times.
Yes.
Um, do we, I guess, and maybe this is a next step for the spec. There's kind of, one, taking some of the notes we had on like components and sampling rates and just the simple stuff, putting it into a table. But I didn't know too, um, if, and I could do that offline to not drag people through, but should I also do it? Like, is there that redfish profile, is it in a spec anywhere yet, or should we put it in here, or what? That's
S-
what, yeah.
So yeah, so actually good topic. And speaking of John Leong, so
Mhm.
in the hardware management profiles sub team or sub work stream this week, John actually went through and he's got basically we're ratifying the process for OCP as the how does this stuff get used. And
Okay.
so the gist of it is the profile is effectively a supporting document for a specification. So it is not going to be it's not an OCP
Not a
specification,
standalone spec.
not a
Yep.
standalone spec.
Okay.
And so there's two components to the profile. We actually have the JSON document, which you may have looked at already, and that's the machine readable, the actual thing that the tools and the can use to can validate that a device follows the profile. And then there's a usage guide, right? And I may getting that terminology wrong, but basically just effectively the documentation, and John has written some of those himself. I tried to use our documentation generator to craft one. It doesn't come out the way that I think that the folks want. So I'm scrubbing through some of my work to make it more of a, it was really more of a use case where the automatic generation of documentation for the profile becomes effectively that checklist that you would put kind of at the end of the doc, as the okay, now that you understand
Right.
why this is all here, here's the things that here's the stuff that actually makes that magic happen. And so So however however that profile and that use case document gets created, those go into the management profiles work stream, and
Okay.
so and those, because they're not specifications, they will now be approved by the hardware management group, and the chairs there, and one of them is me. So
Okay.
that's me and Hemel. So it doesn't go to the board. It doesn't go to that. So that's kind of part of the streamlining process that John's been working through, of not everything has to go up for the board and all that kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
that stuff, right? So this is not a real, this is not a specification. This is
Okay.
so now
And it'll
that
just
said,
go up like on the OCP site, or like how would we?
well,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to remember, so I may speak incorrectly, but I believe the answer is it will. So for certain, the materials go up on the GitHub for the the OCP profiles GitHub repo. So the stuff is clear, is definitely there for folks to consume. I believe the answer is that the usage guide or use case documentation, that document would get, once approved by hardware management, then would get shown in the contribution database, or shown in the OCP site, wherever it makes
Yeah, and
sense.
then and this guy, right, somewhere in here. I think I'm still sharing. Am I
You're
still
not sharing at the moment, so
I thought I was. Let
um,
me get each day.
yeah,
Sorry.
but so
That was
now,
worth very much. But yeah, that
so
little
what
drop down.
yeah, it'll be somewhere in that drop down, I think. So the more important piece of this is that those profiles that are intended to be a tool for the work groups, for the other projects, to reference in their specifications. So this kind of helps us tie, I think, everything together. Is that what we want to do here for sustainability? Is we want to mandate the support of being able to retrieve this data, right, from various devices. So what we would do is we go create the profile and then the use case. And the use cases are pretty straightforward. I mean, I think I've got that in this PowerPoint that I can show from last July.
Okay.
It's like, yeah, we need you to be able to get power and energy. Ta-da! And we can work on some other stuff, right? But so we would go create that profile, go get that run through the hardware management group, and then we would go shop to the various projects, server, rack and power, and I'm going to forget all their correct names, the cooling folks, et cetera, and say, hey guys, we think that you should, in the next rev of your specification or whatever you've got work coming up,
Yep.
to meet the pillar of sustainability, put a reference into your specification that says, products shall meet the requirements, and pass this profile, and then point to it. So
Question.
that's how it becomes spec for OCP.
Got it. Okay. I think makes sense. We'll, like you said, as documents get approved and get places, I think it'll all come together.
Mm-hmm.
One question. Does what's in the GitHub repository, that's the JSON document, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think the use case documents will go there too. So
Okay.
they may also exist. I mean, well, I would
Oh,
hope that
true.
they will
Okay.
also exist
Yeah,
elsewhere, right?
that's what they're trying to go to.
Yeah, so let's make sure
Makes
we have it in GitHub, right? So
Okay, that, and then the next question is, the way a redfish profile works, I mean, to me, I think about it as the structure, right? It gives you all the, structure to do everything. Is there anything, if you, let's say you load that up and you start running it, there's nothing in that, for instance, oh, I'm running this profile, I forgot to fill out some field. Like, will it, like, oh, I didn't put, I have a power sensor, and let's say like we decide, oh, in your power sensor, you have to fill out the sample rate field, like,
yep,
and they didn't do that.
right.
There's nothing in the profile that's gonna like flag it, catch it, break, right?
Oh yeah, yes.
Oh,
The profile, the JSON document obviously doesn't, but that
right.
JSON document gets consumed by a tool that the DMTF publishes, an open source, freely available tool called the Redfish Interop Validator, that you take and
There you go.
yeah. So you point the interop validator at a Redfish endpoint, so IP address equals whatever, username and password, and then you tell it, and here is the profile I want you to validate. And so then it will go run through that profile and then go talk to that system, pull the data, and do all the comparisons and basically run a report and tell you what did you pass, what did you fail, what was optional, that kind of stuff. So yes, that there is a validator to do that. Now
Got it.
there are limitations to that, and I don't think we will hit much of the limit. And limitations are just like this is limits of computers. They're not human. So or more to the point, we don't want to do destructive testing. So the validator will not do things like make sure that you can change the power limit, things like that, because that would require us to go write values, and that could screw up
Well,
stuff, right? So
yeah, so cool. So that makes perfect sense. But I
but I
understand.
think for our purposes, I mean, I don't think we're not really doing a lot of knob turning in our, in what our requirements would be. It's mostly going to be, did you express the data? Did you have a complete picture? And the profile is absolutely there for that kind of thing. It's like,
Yeah, I
is
think
it there? Good.
good. Yeah, so that's the first thing. I think there might be like kind of how we've discussed like minimal sample rate. Is there an ability to code in a few like mins, maxes, something?
Yes, you can do. Yeah, you can do mins and maxes. We've added that. It's kind of stretching what the profile was originally envisioned to do, but yeah, but I think we can do those kinds of things. So we
Okay.
can say that, yeah, the value must be greater than this, or you must
Yeah.
have at least three. So the intent of the profile was really to get was really to make sure that clients and services had a reasonable expectation of what data was available. So it wasn't so much about the values of the data, because like, well, as long as I can get the sampling rate, then I'm good. My client doesn't break because I know it. Yeah. Now, if you say that like, your product really should be reporting a sampling rate, should be able to have a sampling rate less than X. Uh, I think we can express that in the profile. But it starts to
Okay.
get outside of the bounds of what um, of what like the tools. It won't be able to validate some of that stuff, but that's okay. It'll be documented.
Yeah. So if I okay, so I think probably the best thing to is I think it'll be a little bit tedious, so I can just take it up to start trying to do it. Is I know I've seen, and you emailed the PowerPoint, so I probably have that somewhere. But
I can send again to it.
yeah, I think
Well,
that
and it should.
I don't know if I have the pointer to the actual JSON document, or if that's because none of that's in the contributions yet, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have not written a profile for sustainability, but given the given the subject areas and the
Yeah.
we can craft that real quick. To me is once we have kind of a quick spreadsheet, or at least even just a PowerPoint of here's the stuff we want, then I can pretty quickly go and translate that to the where it is in the profile and the model and stuff. And again, I hate to say this on a recorded line, but I wrote the profile spec, so I know that pretty well.
Yeah. No, cool. Okay. Do so I think I mean, I guess that's probably one of the steps for sure. Maybe
Yes.
do you want to I mean, do you want to do like something like I'll do some offline stuff on cleaning up the Word document, trying to fix my
Yeah.
GitHub. Do you want to take a stab at the first rev of the power telemetry profile for sustainability updates?
Sure.
Okay.
Let me pull up the. I'm going to pull up the presentation I did, because I think I had a list. Yeah. Uh. Yeah. Tell you what. Danny, let me share this deck
Yeah.
real quick, and we'll so we can.
Stop.
Like, sometimes the Zoom just allows you to grab it. Sometimes you gotta ask, right? So okay.
There you go.
All right. So this is the deck I presented back in
Yep.
July at our face to face. Let me see where. So in here I was. This isn't calling out. I think I'm using some of the terminology, but trying to first translate folks to the. Let's talk about the data, and then I'll talk about the actual, where it exists in the data model and what the actual names of the properties are, because that's all inside baseball thing, right? So to me, the scope of, I think, what we wanted in our profile was, we clearly want power and energy readings. Um, we may say about, do you have to have, you may have to have one or the other. I would like to say, that you need to have both, especially because of the benefits of being able to have energy reported instead of only power, because it gets us out of all that sampling rate stuff. So now one of the things we can do is the profile has concepts of like mandatory and optional, or sorry, not it's the words are mandatory and recommended. So,
Okay.
it may be that, hey, for 2024, version 1 of the profile might say, power and watts is a mandatory reporting, and maybe energy in kilowatt hours is a recommended. And then we can make some notes in there to say like, expect this to be required in the next, in the next profiles, right? So kind of help folks to set direction is what that was intended for. So and then the location data, being able to find where in the world the device is, and then also the where am I in the rack. So having some of that fleshed out, and we'll have to take some care about that as to like, well, if you're an option card, some of that obviously is not up to you, but that's okay. Somebody has to fill it out. So
And just we're going through those. I'm leaning to recommend it. Is there anybody that thinks this is like the energy or power? And we can discuss. Those are like
yep.
One of them at least. I think energy is going to be a must-have.
Mm-hmm.
Location seems like a recommended to me.
Yeah. I'm all for trying to make trying to make our first profile something that folks can pass if they've been awake, right? So yeah, but I want to, some of the stuff I definitely want to set direction, because the carbon guys are going to want to have a lot of location data. We're going to want to have in the data center, in the rack, those kinds of things to help, as you want to start, actually doing something about the power consumption. You're going to want to be able to figure out who's, where's the, the stranded power, where's the oversubscription, those kinds of things, hotspots, things like that, right? So
yeah,
this is kind of driving correct behavior, but yes, I'm absolutely on and the thing about this stuff is to me, the location data, a lot of this is very much chicken and egg. It's not difficult to implement. It takes up a little bit of storage space, on the order of some bytes. You got to go carve out some non-volatile memory, but boy, everything's done in Flash these days, so it's not like we're asking you to put down another double EEPROM, right? So
yeah.
but it's like, but nobody does it because no one asks for it, or there's no use cases where it actually gets consumed. So it's like, okay, let's try to help break this chicken and egg cycle by saying, look, for sustainability, this stuff is actually really important data. So let's drive that. Yeah, get after it.
I'm with you. I like the start out. Things can change. We want to let people adopt, but then we want to get a path. And I think this is one of these, like, I definitely see it as like recommended at first. And then very soon we're going to be like, heads up, because people are going to want to optimize at time of day, and green carbon is in this country or that or whatever. Like, we see this as, probably moving to mandatory later, but,
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I capture that in the notes.
Yeah. And one of our other concepts, we may want to, we could form, two profiles. We could, have like the gold and the platinum, to follow the power supply guys.
That's a good point.
So that's another possibility. But we could start with one that just has a lot of stuff that's recommended, and then we can kind of say, look, and then maybe that is, instead of sustainability, profile version 2, maybe it becomes the sustainability gold, and so that, hey, the silver sits around, and the gold one comes up later, something like that. But those are all things we can do.
And is that the terminology?
No, I've just made that up from the power supply guys, right? They have the platinum, and then whatever they have, like, I don't know, titanium,
okay, cool.
and they have to. I think I don't know what they're going to go to after titanium. They're probably uranium, and probably somebody's going to have to explain to them that's not a good idea.
Or something like
right? Exactly. Yeah, the unobtainium, I think, is the
Then we all retire,
right? Right. So and then sort of on.
So under the location, I see two things mentioned, right? So one is, where in the world, and the other one says the room or which rack. Can we, on a sub attribute level, have the location in the world as mandatory, but room, rack, all of that is just recommended?
Yep.
Because
yeah, we could do things like, if you is, for instance, like, hey, if you're a server, so like if you're a freestanding, rack enclosure or a rack mount server, that you have to tell us where you're at in the world or something like that. Whereas like, if this is a a power supply, and we're probably getting getting too deep here on that stuff. But yeah, we can do things like make some conditional requirements. I didn't get into that, but there's too much flexibility in the profile for producing conditional things. So you can say like, oh yeah, if this is a rack mount chassis, then you have to have the location, for instance, or and if it's not, then if you're a blade, well, you're going to get that from your enclosure, so yeah, you don't have to have it.
What is I mean, that's a good point, Shruti. What, along those lines, what is like I mean, like, we're all US focused, so I would be like, oh, zip
Yeah.
code. But zip code isn't everywhere in the world.
So it's well, okay, so it's not in this deck, and I can pull that up, I think. So since this deck was presented, I wrote this, with the knowledge that there was stuff coming in the Redfish standard to help with that. So let me make sure I'm not talking out of turn. If I am, I'm talking a turn about 48 hours early. I believe that was in our previous release. Let me just pull up another deck on the side here real
That
quick,
along the
because
lines of what you were thinking, Shruti, that like
yes, yeah.
that seems like we might even want to start with that, since a lot of people have been asking in terms of,
Yeah, and I think the location in the world that probably Jeff you are referring to is similar to how what time depicts the location in the world, which is not really zip code. But
Correct.
Yeah,
Pretty-
zip code is
Bingo,
way
okay.
too fine grained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want
So-
basically the grid
Right. Let me show you what I got here.
on a
New share. Just switching to, all right. The good news is, yes, this was we presented this last July. This came out in Redfish in September. So it was very much in flight when I gave that talk. So we have so the location data was in Redfish since day one. That's the stuff that we defined, and please don't go look at it now because yikes. So we followed an existing RFC that talked about that. Unfortunately, that RFC is, I think, is it 30 or 40 years old? It's been around for a long time. And it was certainly written long before any of the search engines or any of the modern mapping tools and whatnot. So it has, like, I want to say 40 or 50 individual properties. It's the street name, and then cardinal street direction, street subname, subdivisions, and it just goes on and on. Borough, parish, county. Everything is different, and it's like, oh my gosh, what do you ever fill out? And I understand why they did it the way they did, because it was probably expecting to go into a database that way. But it's very difficult to get anybody to implement. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to go put all 45 of these options up on a GUI to say, Mr. Customer, please go fill it out, and therefore nobody can write any software for it, right? So anyway, all that background aside, so like, what, we took a hard look at this and said, like, what, for that where in the world stuff, we've replaced that whole postal address, which has all that stuff from that RFC in it. We've replaced it with this new one called physical address. And we basically distilled this down to a combination of human readable and programmatic consumable fields that hopefully, and I had very much the sustainability data on top of mind for this. So in the human, I can get street address, city, state, and country, and postal code, which it's not zip code, it's postal code. And so and we talked about how much to break this apart, and we kind of settled on this. So you basically put everything you need on the street address, because if I take all this data, just concatenate it and throw it into any of the mapping APIs, you get back an address. You'll get the pin in the world. So I don't need to. We talked about, do we do street address 1, street address 2? Do you have like apartment? You know what? Just throw it on there, because if you're trying to get a part delivered to a replacement trying to get a replacement part delivered to a facility, you're just going to throw it into a map API, right?
Yeah.
So it does all that. For our stuff on the terms of the grid, we have at least started on this. He's like, so you've got things like state or province that can get you some of those things, but there's the ISO country code and this ISO subdivision code. So these are, defined by ISO. There is 3166, -1 and -2. So this is either what was most people are used to is it's either a 2-digit or 2-character or 3-character code that for every country, and then and that's it. And so we don't specify if you have to do the 2 or the 3 because I think half the world will do the 2 and half the world will do the 3 because it's either US or USA. So so we're not going to get into that. But yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's really easy to look the codes up. Is it 2-digit? Is it 2 characters? Then look at the 2-digit list, right? So the second one, this subdivision code is probably not as well known, and I wish we could put a better pattern around that, but it is basically left to the country to define. So for the United States, the subdivision codes are the 2-digit postal abbreviations for states and the territories. Other countries will use 2 or 3-character similar types of things. I don't know if they reflect as much to their postal standards, or is this just common usage? Unfortunately, other countries just have them labeled like 1 through 5, but those translate to something in the table that I assume that if you're in one of the countries that has region 1, 2, 3, or 4, and 5, that the text description for those is meaningful to you. So hopefully that's good enough. So
Yeah, I'm kind of having a hard time figuring out the use case. Because from a sustainability point of view, you just gave a use case from a part replacement
mhm.
point of view. That's interesting. But from a sustainability point of view, this is all out of band information, mostly accessible by the owner
Right.
of the physical facility, who usually knows where they are.
Well,
And all the
not
rest-
if you're not if you're aggregating all this data up to some cloud thing, right? So but you're right, Deb. I mean, this is probably not necessary for a lot of the use cases that I know where I'm dialing into to this data center. I know where it is and I get that set somewhere, but it's trying to get it so that these devices have enough ability on their own that hey, if I actually wanted to run some sort of sustainability smell test on this unit, I don't have to input anything, right? I can just go query all that from the unit, find out how much power you're using, how much what's your electric thing, et cetera, and then oh, I can also find out where you're at, so I'll go do a lookup to see what your grid intensity is, and that's a start.
Mhm.
Would it still need like the detail up to street address and maybe even city, or can we make it a little bit more higher level?
I'm sorry, Shruti, you broke up a little bit there. A
I
little
think
bit.
she asked if we could make it, did you say higher level?
Yeah, I mean, do we need the details of like having the street address, etc. here?
Oh, this is just this is what has been defined in the standard. So and agreed, for our purposes, for sustainability, we may just want to say this. We just may want to say the country codes.
Right. Yeah.
At least for now.
Country and a subdivision,
And
probably.
subdivision code, yeah. We may just want those 2 programmatic things because I think that's what we would care about.
That's what I was thinking too.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, most of the sustainability use cases, like, when people talk about, moving in time and space, right? They don't have access to the out of band information, so they are getting this information a whole other way.
Well, but that's what this is going to.
Yeah,
though.
that's what,
So
right.
we're starting with this and we have this. Then when we put out our API for the end user, this is the data that API would pull from.
Yeah, so totally understand and remember, this is, we have to set this stuff in motion, and it will take, years for us to see this stuff, in any quantities in the field. So, the more whips we can crack, but it was going to take time. So Deb, yeah, absolutely. This is not something you could go tell somebody to do today and go write a piece of software and have it work. It's
Right,
just
but
not viable.
I'll just say people are already doing it, so all of those methodologies not using out of band will be well entrenched by the time we have anything available, right? So,
Yeah, and if we were doing this only for sustainability, I would agree that it was probably not worth the effort, right? But this physical location pieces from the standard has a
sure.
lot of other value, right? So I want us to, yeah, I'm trying to playing both sides of this push rope
Yeah.
here is like, let's give them the reason to do it. Like, hey, you know, we think this is good data to have for sustainability. I mean, are we going to make these required? I would say no, we certainly can't, because
Okay.
this is really new. So it's recommended, but again, it's raising awareness and saying, look, we have rationale for why this could be useful for software. None of the software has been written, but this is, again, it's a chicken and egg thing. You know, allowing the user to set this data, that's really simple. I mean, it's a couple lines of code. You know, so but that data could be really, really valuable.
Okay, as long as it's not mandatory.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah,
you know,
again,
I'm
yeah.
fine.
I think our job, I think, is to make a bar low enough that, you know, if folks have been doing, if they've been paying any attention at all, that they should be able to pass this stuff, or get there quickly. Not, you know, oh my gosh, I've got to go change my design and go add a bunch of sensors and add a bunch of code, right? So, yeah, I don't want us to be I don't want us to say, hey, the first systems that pass our profile come out in 2026. I'm hoping they, you know, like, there's already a bunch of units that can pass it, and then, you know, maybe they don't meet all these recommendations, but that's okay. That's why they're recommended.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the
Yeah,
previous slide from this one, Jeff?
yeah. Let
Because
me get rid of this.
actually you did have something that is very much of interest to me.
I should have just shared my screen because okay, let's see where I was. I don't know why. I think, yeah, I was just
Yeah.
here.
So you were talking about power outlets.
Yeah, I
So,
didn't get there yet. Yeah,
oh yeah,
that's
but
okay.
you have it here.
Yeah, yeah.
So of great interest would be getting power measurements, energy measurements along the powertrain
Yes,
to the
absolutely.
rack, and then within the rack, any, you know, I always get confused on what things are called, like the
Yeah, that's okay.
PSUs,
Yeah, the
you know,
PDU, the PSUs, yes, all the.
to understand, you know, what was at the input, what was it at the output, and then also to call out the power contribution of the fans.
Yes.
If we could have all of those pieces, then we would be getting
See, do I
a
have that?
good way towards, so right now there's PUE, but if we could we would be doing better at getting
The ITUE.
The new method.
ITUE, I think, is the new one. So again, and I probably had it in the other deck, but also at that July timeframe, as we were talking about the ITUE. So one of the other things that I added to the Redfish spec was effectively a way for you to expose the fan power in total, separately from the total system power. So that is also in the spec. So yes, I think that's the kind of stuff that we'll want to call out, that hey, for servers, you know, it's going to be, you know, again, the crawl, walk, run of this. I think that we start with a mandatory, you got to report power and energy, or, you know, we can debate those, right? Which is more important. And then we would say, you know what? And then I also want, we would highly recommend that you break out things like the individual processor, you know, power consumption and the total fan consumption. And, you know, we may want to say that, you know, memory consumption would be another, you know, power consumption for the memory devices. That would also be good. So I think those things would be recommended. What I did on the fan stuff was, since we only need we need all the fans, right? We just want to know all of the power you're wasting on cooling. So I don't break out the individual fans, because that's going to be a lot of hardware, and I don't think anyone needs that. What you know, what we care about is, you know, we know that fans, when they spin faster, they consume more power. You know, I'm not going to ask them to instrument out that. You know, what we're looking for is that, as an entire cooling subsystem, you know, how much power you're using. So,
At
you know, if
what
you
level of are you talking here? Is
so
it the
I was gonna give.
motherboard, at the rack?
For an individual system. So individual system, or if it was sorry, and I say system, it's really an individual chassis. That's how the model gets broken up. So most servers are a single chassis. So I would get, here's all of the, fan, or effectively here's the cooling subsystem, or I think it's actually called the thermal subsystem. Here's the thermal subsystem's power consumption. So if I have 6 fans, then that's the sum total of all those fans. If it was a liquid cooling system and it had an active pump, then I would get that pump power. That's what I would expect to be in that.
And is that like, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like you have a 2 UCOS chassis and there's 6 fans, but we only really going to report one quote fan energy, right?
Correct.
For that chassis. Like, and is it sort of like, fans dot and then the chassis name? Like that's the high level thing, right? Like,
yeah, let me see if I've got it was in the other deck. Well, here's an example. So every chassis, and this, well, it's unfortunately not this. So this is showing this is showing a processor example, but Redfish, we have a common resource or schema called environment metrics. Environment metrics gets sprinkled throughout the data model. So there is an environment metrics under every chassis. There's an environment metrics under every processor, under every memory device, under every disk. Because, and for the most part, it's for doing 2 things. It's either getting your power readings or your temperature. That's the kind of the common use cases for those things. So the data is presented the same format, all over the place. And so in the case that we're talking about, it would be the one under chassis. I'm just going to here, let me just fix this here. So like this would be chassis 1. So if I spell it right there, so that that's so this becomes the this becomes the internal temperature of the chassis, the power consumption of the chassis, the energy consumption of the chassis. This is a misnomer for this particular case, so ignore that. But because the fans is actually another thing. So
is it? I mean, again, I'm kind of just thinking in terms of like this is all running on a BMC, and there's usually one BMC per chassis. But is the schema flexible to where like wherever Redfish is running, there could be multiple chassis?
Yep.
Okay, and then there.
Yeah. There's a whole chassis. There's a whole chassis containment model.
Right, chassis 1. What's its fans? Chassis 2. What's its fans?
Yep.
It's just, and then that's in whatever is running that Redfish schema. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
and we have some implementation, guidance to say like, look, if you're aggregating this stuff up like to a rack, the rack is another type of chassis. But if you start reporting fans in your rack, well, that means that's your kind of your rack level, like the the rear door heat exchanger or something. That's where that would be. That's not the you're not summing up the 40 servers inside that rack. If you wanted to get the individuals of those, you're gonna have to drill down to go do all that.
Got it. Cool. Okay, thanks.
But are we able to get information about the rear door heat exchanger,
Yes.
about the in-rack
Mhm.
PSUs?
Mhm.
All of that is reported?
It is in many ways, and so that's what we've been trying to do, is to extend the Redfish support to include all that infrastructure, and that's what I've been working on for the last couple of years, is the PDUs and the liquid cooling systems, and the liquid cooling systems also include those heat exchangers and things like that. So it's all coming.
PSUs in the rack.
The
And then
PSUs are all, those are all monitored. Those are almost all, subservient to the BMC of the server. So yeah, you can get all those details, the input and output.
So my understanding is that many people have, the power comes into the rack. There is I guess, a chassis by your terminology, where the power is converted and then distributed to each of the server motherboards. So that
So there's two basic models for these days. You either have it comes down to, are you doing AC distribution or DC distribution? With AC being the most prevalent. So in that case, you'll have some sort of rack power distribution units. A lot of times they look like big hunker power strips. And so so those PDUs, and we have a couple of those shipping now with Redfish support on them. So you can get the stuff in the same formats. So our profile will work on that kind of stuff to see the input to the rack, and then you can even get the the power of the individual outlets. So I can go start doing all that mapping, and and get the readings for each of those. If there's 25 servers in the rack, well, there's 25 outlets. Well, there you go. So I
Right,
can do
but
all
we
that.
would be able to understand what power was lost in that transformation,
Correct. Yeah, yeah. There's
right?
there's input and output power. Yeah.
Okay, so
Now
'cause
for our
that's
for
a
our
pretty big piece.
it it is it's certainly non-trivial, but so for our purposes, I think that we don't. The reason we would want to do those is only for those ITUE types of
Exactly,
calculations, right?
exactly.
But in terms of sustainability, I always tell folks, like you need to be measuring wall watts, because that's yeah, it's just before any of the losses happen in your product. I need to know how much power you're pulling from the grid,
Yes,
because all
and
of that gets consumed as
yes,
heat, right? So
yes, and so absolutely, and I, we're like two peas in a pod because people are always saying, "Oh, yay, look at, this thing I did. I greened my software," and I'm like, "How much reduction was there in the power draw from the grid?" They have no idea.
yeah.
It's probably negligible, if at all, right?
Well, yeah, and it's kind of fascinating because when we look at some of the and I and some of us and the folks that are actually real experts in the power
Yeah,
infrastructure, they kind of shake their head some of the stuff when people are talking about I'm going to go put the processors into like micro sleep for these workloads, so I'm going to cut them off so they're not consuming much power for several microseconds, and to kind of do this stuff like, and people are going, you realize that this is all being absorbed by the capacitance of the
exactly,
everything. And so, yeah, you
exactly,
didn't change a damn thing. So don't,
exactly.
all you did was consume energy in all
Uh-huh.
the monitoring and control of that. So,
Exactly. So with all that being said, still, when we have this ITUE or whatever it's called, if you want to be monitoring that metric and showing progress on that metric, we
yep.
need to, if you're doing it at a rack level, right, you need to, every place where, anything that would incentivize somebody to have a more efficient architecture or what have you, right?
Yeah.
That's a sustainability thing. And
So
so,
Danny, I think Deb's hit on a real good point for us in the if we made a list
Mhm.
of the use cases,
yeah,
what is it that why do and because I obviously and I
That's
apologize,
true.
I dive into the
Start with
solution here quickly,
that.
right? But let's start with the use cases, and I think we've
Yeah.
got like three. Number one, is we want to be able to determine the accurate power and energy consumption of everything in the data center, right? Yeah, and we can get more fine grained later, right? Number two, we want to be able to locate we want to be able to provide the data necessary for carbon accounting.
Yep.
And then I think number three is we want to
um,
and we want to support we want to provide data to support the new ITUE or other newly emerging sustainability metrics.
Yeah.
we need to talk about the carbon accounting one.
I
A
was trying to just be general. It's like that's why I was trying to say that location
a
data and
couple of,
stuff, but
but I mean, also the one thing I saw go by as you were presenting, Jeff, and might not come to mind, but yes, this
yep,
last one, this inventory.
yep. Well,
I
that's part of that carbon accounting, right?
Well, yeah, yeah. I worked under another nonprofit and with another whatever, blah blah blah. Um, so there was a big survey of all of these data center owners and operators, and rent. Yeah, and they don't know what they've even got in there.
Right.
Uh,
Oh
and
yeah,
so
it's amazing, isn't it?
it is amazing because the regulators want them to show the utilization right,
Right.
improving, and they're just like, well, I don't know anything. At some point, these machines got rolled in, those got rolled in, this group understands that piece, and this other group these, and we would have to walk the data center with a clipboard if you
Yeah.
wanted to know
Oh
what's in
yeah, they're
there.
doing the doing the annual walkthrough, right? So yeah, so I think that's part of the stuff. And Deb, it's just an aside, it's sort of funny because coming from the very old days of the netware and compact gear, we had heard what maybe I would, some people would consider horror stories. We thought that was awesome, but there were things where literally there had been netware servers that had been locked away in a closet. In some cases had been walled off accidentally. And but they were still running, and for years and nobody knew where they
Oh my
were. That kind
gosh.
of, yeah. So, but nobody talks about uptime of for servers anymore like that. But anyway, but it was, but I
Oh,
totally wanted to hear the.
that's great. So yeah, but yeah, so can we just go back and
Yeah,
let's
I'm hoping
keep
Danny was taking some
those
notes to get
three.
those kind of those top use
Yeah,
cases.
I grabbed it, and I think that'll be
Okay.
one of the things in the doc cleanup. I'll also add some language for use phases, and we can all look at it and improve it next time.
Yeah, because I think that would translate well then to our profile use case thing. Is okay, use case one, get power and energy data, and then we can talk about, okay, let's start with the device, or the system level, and I hate to call it that, but the thingy, what's the thing with the AC power plug? That's where that's what we want to measure, and then okay, and then subsection A, hey, if you're a server with with big pieces of heavy power consuming subsystems like processors and GPUs and memory, then it would behoove you to break those things out to show those individual subsystems, and that because that can help with all the all of the reduction efforts and so forth. And then if you are a PDU, then hey, make sure that you offer it's got to be mandatory reporting of the input, the input energy and power for that for that PDU. And boy, we'd like to and all these guys offer models that have per outlet power. It's interesting. Some of them do. They like, yeah, I'm a monitored and I think it's the terminology is like metered and controlled are the two terms I think I hear. It's sort of funny. And so metering, they sometimes will supply just the voltage and amperage on the outlets and not the power or the energy. It's like, well, guys, you got that. So let's get some consistency in reporting this data. So just please do the math. But it's that kind of consistency I think we want to we will want to push for. That hey, if you're going to provide outlet level statistics, then we want to see real power and and more importantly energy. And again, this will take time to get folks to do, but there are there's lots of efforts underway to help some of that stuff with open source. There's and then when we're kind of trying to just drive that through the through all this stuff, right? So chicken and egg.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, that's a good. I know the use case stuff is good.
And then under that carbon accounting, that's that location data falls into that, because that's how that's how we can help show you what where you are and get you connected to what or match you up with your grid intensities. But then this basics of, and this should be like the simplest thing for our folks to meet, but it's a very important part. Like, can you make sure that you have usable vendor model make and model numbers, so that if someone is doing a discovery and can pull an inventory up, that okay, they can, number one, they can identify everything, and then that's how we then do the lookups in those carbon databases of like, this is a Contoso 7500 X75. Okay, there, I found it.
What, for the embodied carbon?
For the embodied carbon, yeah.
Yeah,
And that's what the other guys are doing. No, it doesn't, and that's what the other work stream is working on, right? So,
well, the one that I'm in charge of, or
no, they were doing they weren't necessarily making the database. They were trying to make the APIs for the database, right?
Right. So that's the one I'm in charge of. I've basically given up on that. I said we're not doing that because nobody is sharing. Basically, it's very, very hard.
Yeah.
The MIT thing, Deb, is that the one you're talking?
So Paya maybe at
Yeah.
some point. Paya is moving at a crawl. They have nothing available now. When it is available, how they will or won't connect with any software that we do or don't create is completely open. So
Deb did the announcement this week that OCP was building, I came up with it. Was it a more connected alliance with the infrastructure
iMasons,
masons? Yeah.
yeah,
And by the way,
they
it's the first time
know
I've
even
heard them
less
spelled
than
out as
I do.
infrastructure.
Remember, I work for a silicon manufacturer. iMason. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to work with them and kind of
Yeah.
educate them. But where I'm at now is if OCP publishes a completely transparent quote unquote model in an Excel spreadsheet
Hmm.
that you kind of put in what your requirements are and it gives you, here's the best number I can come up with.
Hmm.
And it's, red, yellow, green relative to your requirements, right?
Right. Right.
Um, I do think that, people will be able to use that as a starting point and it will have the transparency and they will see what isn't available. And then, if over time Paya wants to engage to make that spreadsheet better or replace it, but, something that's transparent and clear and
Yep.
understands people's requirements.
So yeah, so the good news here, I think, is that this data is number one. Almost everybody has this, but I think it's so this is probably the easiest thing for folks to conform to because they should
Well,
already have enough,
again,
of it, right?
out of
But
band, when so I think about that whole path and the users of the out of band path, but I also spend a lot of time with people that are trying to green their software, especially in the cloud.
mhm,
Um, and yeah, their ability to understand what they're actually running on, right? Because
yep,
CSPs don't, if you use Graviton, for example, or
right, right,
Cranium, none of that stuff is really available. And if you're using more, Intel or AMD parts, they have their special SKUs that neither party will tell you anything about, et
hmm
cetera, et cetera. So,
yeah, it'll be it will be interesting how we want to. I mean, I think from this group's perspective, we're trying to explain the data, and get it available. I'm sorry, get it available in a standardized format. That's kind of our job. The case of hey, I want to access this from a cloud tenant in some large center. Yeah, I don't know if they are going to provide any of this data to you, but that doesn't mean the data is not available. It means that it's not available to you. So that I think that's
I
a different issue, right? But
I
but
agree.
but but
Danny
absolutely
has
germane.
said in his Rev 2, he's going to make energy or power somehow bust through
Hmm.
the unbreakable wall and let software. Because until then, what we're doing is, publishing curves and,
Yeah,
that's another thing I'm working on is just sort of understanding,
and
those
and it,
software people, they understand utilization as reported by the operating system. So how can we give them curves that align to that? Because they don't exist now.
right.
Um, it's a different, they exist, they're not widely available, and they're not aligned to OS utilization. They're aligned to other definitions of
Hmm.
utilization.
Yes, yes. Defining what equals 100% utilization, and does that equate to 100% of the power? Boy, it sure does not.
Yeah. Okay. So we only got a couple minutes left. This is so good. I grabbed a few notes there. I'll send them out on the country code stuff. And the use case is a good one. I agree. I'll take a stab at it sort of at the start of the document. And then we just, like you said, keep referring to it throughout. And then maybe, yeah, in the interim, if like you said, if you want to take a first rev at the power telemetry addition to the profile that we'd want to and then what we would dump into the spec,
I haven't heard anything that we came up with that would be added in this conversation. Jeff, is that true? Did you have it all covered, or?
It's not in the spec yet that we might be missing,
Well,
or the profile, I should say?
that's not available in Redfish now. And we would
I
just
don't think so. But that wasn't a miracle. That was me paying attention to what you all were doing. So, and effectively front running it. So, yeah, it
our
was.
spec would just be identifying what you already have.
Yes.
And saying which things would be mandatory and which things would be nice to have.
Exactly. I hope that's the case. I hope that's the path I've laid out for us.
In the context of use cases, yeah.
Yeah, I think, I agree. I think, like you said, because you put in the work early, I think it's mostly us deciding, again, mandated, nice to have, future rev, gold, silver, those kind of nuances. Because even looking forward to when we do, like you said, get across that magical wall, and the app owners have access to some amount of this. I don't think there's anything, I mean, it's all there. At that point, it becomes a software API that's just, letting the right people know about the right things and nothing else. And so, no, I think this is, I can't think of anything missing. Okay, cool.
Great.
So if you could just put on the use cases, Danny, and we can talk about it more next time, but just so I don't forget, giving a software team their monthly carbon bill, or even just their monthly power bill is fine. Operational power and embodied carbon, if we could figure out that use case.
I missed that. You're saying like what the use case that this would feed with respect to carbon accounting?
Right. So giving a software team their monthly energy used report, right? So the data center owner, the facility owner that has access to all this out of band information, they would collect it across the month, and then at the end of the month tell the software team, here's what your stuff cost from an energy point of view.
That would be the next phase that we need to enable, right? Like what else?
No, I'm thinking that's actually in this phase. The next phase is the software team can discover it themselves on an hourly basis or whatever. But this would more. So I'm just bringing this up. Google does.
Some of that is, I'm not sure if this phase will get to that because, for instance, we don't have, in this initial release, we're not going to say like, hey, if you had 5 people on a VM, how do you decide how much of the fan power was each of them? Like dividing it up equally might not be right. When somebody was running a very power hungry workload or used more memory or, that I think is maybe either a future thing or something that comes into like the software API, but there's definitely some other, I think, work and nuance to how do you divide up, even if you know the whole system and know these components, then attributing it on a per application level is.
Well, usually if a VM is shared, it's all within the same team, right? So I'm saying to report to a team.
All the public cloud, that doesn't apply.
Yeah.
No, well, you rent a VM, right? So, I guess I would just Google Microsoft, AWS. They give these monthly reports to varying degrees of.
Oh yeah,
of course, exactly. And they're.
I mean, I just think for OCP we should enable other entities to do that, and this would be foundational to that.
I agree. We can put some, but I think that might be a little bit of a next step because there is some more work.
But I think it's another it's another aspect of that first use case of the, I need to report, power and energy, but and the what, why am I doing this? Like, well, I may be trying to look at the efficiency of a particular product. I may be looking at it, compare, apples to apples, or I may be trying to provide, a metering, or a monthly reports, that kind of stuff. So that, and how you break that down and divide it up, not our problem.
Exactly. That might be AWS or Azure proprietary. Like, we're very accurate in how we do this, but so we're not maybe going to tell them how, but like you said, if you follow this spec, you have all the ingredients.
Exactly. Yeah. We are enabling you to do that. And what you need. We've given you all the data. We've enabled that use case. Yes.
Yeah. I think that, Okay. We're one over. So, okay.
Yeah. Bye everyone. Thanks, Jeff.
See you guys.
Thanks, all.
Good
Have a
stuff.
good one. All right.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.